Good afternoon, Stefano. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hi, Stefan.
Hi.
From Stefan to Stefano, as usual.
Yes.
Mm.
So today we're going to speak about business register. Okay, that's the goal of this seminar. But is the audience made by only statistician, or we have again a broader audience?
So we have a wide variety of audience, including participants from the state office and also business registration office and on the others. And now, the participant has started joining the meeting, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open the meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the second webinar series on the global initiative on unique identifiers for business. And we are glad today this is the second of the webinar series that bring together many friends from different community, as mentioned from my conversation with Stefano, and also with community from the National Statistical Office, with Business Registration Office, Central Bank, and also relevant regional and also international organization, with the aspiration to support the improvement for the statistical business register and also to the linking of the business registration system to improve the SBR. We are glad that for the first seminar it went well and with around 150 participants. And today we also have many distinguished speakers to share the insight on this topic. But before we start the meeting, and there's several housekeeping announcements, so I want to share to you. And the meeting will be recorded. And so if you are not speaking, we hope that you are able to mute yourself. And in this session, we also have a discussion session. So we encourage you actively participate in the discussion, in the question and answer session, and also the roundtable discussion session. And also, we also encourage you to post message in the chat where we are able to try to answer all the questions and then to facilitate the discussion. So if you have any technical issue with regard to the meeting, please feel free to contact one of us from the UNST. We are able to provide you support online. So with this, and I would like to pass our time to the Director of the United Nations Statistics Division, Stefan. Thank you so much, Stefan, for joining the meeting. And Stefan will give us the opening remarks. So Stefan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julian, and good morning from New York, and good day, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are. So my name is Stefan Schweinfest. I'm the Director of the United Nations Statistics Division. I'm very happy to join you what is an early morning hour for me in New York. It may seem a very technical issue we are discussing today, but it is very, very important. I'm deeply convinced, because in a nutshell, what we are doing is create and construct information systems for policy use and decision making. And we all know how important the underlying infrastructure is: classifications, registers, identifiers. All of these things are critically important to ensure the quality of the information that we ultimately produce. So I'm happy to join this very important meeting and to welcome you to this second meeting in the webinar series on the global initiative on unique identifiers for businesses. This series is organized by my office, the United Nations Statistics Division. Julian is in the lead, you just heard that. But we are working very closely together, of course, with the United Nations Committee of Experts on Business and Trade Statistics. And Stefano, who chairs that, will talk right after me. And of course, our partners in the Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation, GLIFE. And we also have Rico here to talk to us later. So we will be here sharing all the main elements of where we are at this point in time. But we are in a very early process of perhaps creating a global system of unique identifiers. So your opinion and your reactions, your questions or concerns, your experiences are very important to us as we elaborate a work plan So please do actively participate. This is the second meeting Julian mentioned. We had the first one on the 11th of October with over 100, 150 participants. And I was very happy that there was a diversity of participants. We had central banks, national statistical offices, registers, experts from business registrar authorities and other administrative sources, as well as other stakeholders from regional and international organizations. And there were even some users, so it's always a very good mix to start a new process. And I think the success of this first meeting was really to bring all these different communities together and to stress the importance to work in a coordinated manner where all of us will help for a more effective use of administrative data for the statistical business registers, with the ultimate use of what I said at the beginning, to produce high quality data for policy and decision making use. At the first meeting, we had distinguished speakers from the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, UNCITRAL, from the Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation, GLIFE, from the World Bank, and from UNSD, and they presented the various global initiatives that we have at this point. And I think there were two main outcomes. First, I mean, it was clear that unique identifiers at the country level were very important, and where they don't exist, there was a call for establishing them. And the second outcome was to promote the access of administrative sources for statistical business registers. So there was a clear consensus that this is important. So what are we going to talk about today? Today's meeting is to get a better and deeper understanding on the links between business registries and statistical business registers. So we want to explore that linkage. We will look at both sides, and I'm very glad that we have on the one side here Rico Dunn from GLIFE and Monica Canafolia from the UN Commission on International Trade Law, and especially Arthur Kwesiga from Uganda, from the Ugandan Registration Service Bureau. They will all help us to better understand and how business registries around the world operate, and the process of setting up such business registries in countries, and in the specific case of Uganda, share the experience of setting up the business registries and use of unique identifiers. So that's very exciting to have a very specific example. But on the other side, of course, we also have our friends from the National Statistical Offices, and I thank here Rico Kornen from Statistics Netherlands and Peter Borg-Nielsen from Statistics Denmark, who will share with us our national experiences as national statistical officers, how to use business registries information in their statistical work, and about the linkages, important linkages of microdata. So followed by the plenary presentations, you will have an opportunity to intervene, ask questions, express concerns, share additional experiences, and I'm very grateful to my dear colleague and friend Ivo Havinka for moderating this part of the meeting today. And so I hope that we will continue our global collaboration and especially also encourage better national collaboration between regulatory authorities and the national statistical offices and systems, so we can improve our data systems all around the world. So I thank all of you for connecting from wherever you are, early, middle of the day, evening, and I encourage you to actively participate and shape our global activities and agenda in this important area. So I look very much forward to the outcome. I thank my colleagues in my office for the important groundwork to setting this up. And Julian, I believe it's now my honor to turn over to Stefano, who is the chair of our United Nations Committee on Experts on Business and Trade Statistics. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you very much, Julian. I'm very proud to be here to introduce you to the secret of official statistics. When you enter an Italian restaurant, you have a very good meal and you know how this is made. This is made with good pasta and good tomato. When you look at the official statistics, how official statistics are made, we have a business register. So business register is our secret, and we have big data all around the world, but we're not afraid about big data because we want to build a data infrastructure. So data infrastructure, so the business register is a very high quality data infrastructure. Why is it useful? It is useful because it provides you consistent figures. So you can find on Google any figure, but if you want the right one, or maybe the one with a smaller error, you have to build this data infrastructure. What is needed to build this data infrastructure? You need a unique identifier. If you don't have a unique identifier, you are lost in space. That's why, in any country, we are all the official statisticians are looking for food, but also are looking for a unique identifier. Where you can find a unique identifier, it depends on your legal framework, on your institutional framework. Some countries are lucky because they have administrative data, they have access to physical data and administrative data, so they already have a lot of data to build their data infrastructure, the business register. Other countries are less lucky and they have to build them on their own by using direct reporting. That's what we are going to discuss here. Unique identifier is important both for developing and developed country, because just to build something which is a data infrastructure which is fully integrated and fully interdependent with other systems. Now, I think that many governments are copying official statistics, because if you're thinking about new data infrastructure in the public sector, the fact that we have a data ecosystem, all those are form of data infrastructure. So I think that even outside of the statistical field, many of you are not, practitioner of official statistics. You come from other area of knowledge, and maybe you have a lot to learn from the business register, because the business register is a good example of a data infrastructure which is fully consistent and can be used to build and to be interconnected with other data from private data sources and administration. So I think that today we have a lot to learn, and please enjoy this section. Thank you.
So much, Stefan and Stefano, to provide us with the opening remark, and also for your leadership in driving us forward the work. And thank you so much. And with that, now I will pass the time to Rico, the Senior Business Development Manager from the GLIVE, to chair the next session. So Rico, the floor is yours.
Very much, Julian. Good day to everybody. Very nice that you joined this second webinar in this series. And I have the honor to chair this session today, where you have 4 very distinguished speakers and myself to lead you through a couple of items, specifically on the business registers and the statistical business registers. Since I am the first in line to do a presentation, I will quickly start with that, and after that I will, of course, introduce the other 4 speakers every time we move to a new speaker in this session. It's also logical to give a little bio on people, but I'm not going to give a very extensive bio on myself, of course. That would be a bit weird. But I think it's useful to know that before joining GLIVE, I used to work in the Dutch Business Register for a very long time, the administrative business register, of course. I've also been the chair of the European Organization of Business Registers for more than 10 years. And I have also been on the board of the Global Organization of Business Registers, the Corporate Registers Forum. So I do have a little bit experience in the international world of business registers, and that is also the reason why I'm now going to take you with me to a presentation on that field. Let me see if I can find the slides for that. I'm sharing my slides now, so I hope you can see that. I like to take you a little bit around the world on the topic of the business registers themselves, how they operate, what they have in common, what are the differences, and also how they work together in an international way And this presentation is meant to give you a bit of a background also for the other presentations today as a little bit of an overview of how things work on a global scale. I think it's important to start with the main objectives of a business register. Why do we have that? The main thing a business register does is to provide transparency on legal entities and the people involved there. Really, initially, you could say only from a legal perspective, that you really know who you are doing business with, that you are able to have the right people involved in legal proceedings, and absolutely to know who is behind a certain company. And at a later stage, of course, now information on the business register is not only used for statistical purposes, but also, for example, for the whole know your client, customer due diligence activities, and things like that. And what is really important about that is that the generic rule is that information from the registry can always be trusted unless you know it's not true. If you look at the business registers around the world, there are quite a few similarities, but I already tell you that there are many more differences than similarities, actually. You can say that there is a business register in every country or in every jurisdiction. It depends on how a country is organized. For example, a federal state like the United States has a business register really in each state and not on a national level. You can say that the basic content of the registry is usually the same. You will find the registration of companies or also other entities. There will always be a identifying number. There are sometimes problems with that, but that will follow later during the presentations of today. You will see some information on where the entity is based, what the legal form of the entity is, which are the directors and other relevant people in the company, and quite a few other things as well. It is always also the case that there is a responsibility of the registered entity to keep its data up to date in the register so that people can always trust the information. And you will always see that there is some kind of legislation, both for the entire registration process, the fact that you have to register, but also on the functioning of the registry itself as an organization, as an entity. But if you look at differences, there are really a lot of differences. First of all, the type of organization managing the registry. I just gave a few countries as an example here for the different types of organizations managing the registry. Quite often, you can say the registry is being managed by an agency of a ministry. That's the case in many, many countries. There are a few countries around the world where the registry is being managed by the Chamber of Commerce, which will then be a kind of public organization and not a private Chamber of Commerce. In at least two countries here in Europe, you'll see that the registry is being managed by the courts, an administrative part of the court. In the US, almost everywhere, the Secretary of State office is responsible for the business register. In some countries, you'll find the financial regulator, which is responsible. And you see Australia there twice because the registry has been for a long time at the financial regulator in Australia, has moved to the tax office, but it's probably going to move back again because they had some problems with a major IT system there. But also you see in some jurisdictions a licensed commercial company to run the business register. And of course, going back to a major part of our audience today, there is also the statistical office, which is in a few countries very much involved in the registry process. In France and Switzerland, for example, the statistical office is involved in the entire registry process because they already issue the local unique number, the national unique number, in that process. Another difference is under which kind of ministry the business registry usually falls. Quite often it's the Ministry of Justice, but also quite often something like the Ministry of Economic Affairs, or whatever it's called in a certain country. That is also a thing which you see quite often. Then you see quite a difference between the legislation regulating the registry. There are quite a few countries, Anglo-Saxon countries, you can say, or Commonwealth countries, where there is something like a Companies Act, which regulates the establishing of companies. For example, the registration in the UK, but also in Ireland and other countries, the registration of the company by the registrar in the business register really establishes the company. So only at that moment when you are registered, the company exists. But it also means that if you don't comply with all the rules and you are deregistered, your company does not exist anymore. So that's quite different with many other countries. The Companies Act will also say many things about the entire process of registration and also about the functioning of the registration authority. For example, Companies House in the UK is mentioned, of course, in the UK Companies Act about how that works. In other countries, you will find different types of legislation for the different types of activities and different things which are regulated for the registry. For example, the establishing and functioning of legal entities could be put in legislation in something like the Civil Code. There is separate legislation for the registration, and there is separate legislation for the functioning of the registration authority itself. So you can see also on the legislation side many differences. Then the question is, which type of entities are in the business register? You could say that in all countries you will find companies, limited liability companies, are the entities which are always in the register. But in different countries, you might find partnerships, sole traders, associations, foundations, even professionals and even ministries and government agencies themselves in the register. And across the globe, it very much differs which type of entities are in such a business register, which means that especially also for the relation to the global unique identifier, but also in relation to the use of the business register information by statistical offices, it's very different if you can obtain all the information from one source or you have to go to many different sources. In many countries, there is, or all countries, I would say, there is the obligation to keep your data up to date in the register. But in several countries, there's also a process of annual verification where the information in the registry is checked at least once a year by reaching out to the registered entities and asking them, we have this for you, is this still correct? And then there is also a difference whether or not the filing of financial annual accounts is being done at the registry or at a different type of organization. Talking about more differences, even funding model. It is quite different how the registries are funded. Sometimes fully by the government, sometimes fully by the registered entities themselves, where they pay an initial fee or an annual fee to be in the registry. The sales of information to users is sometimes a big part of the funding of the registry, and there are also different mixed models where there is like a subsidy, but also a fee by the registered entities or whatever other combination is possible of these different funding models. What you also see is, depending on the type of organization, whether or not the registry has a separate budget. or that the budget for the organization is fully incorporated in the budget of a ministry and they don't have any moving space for themselves to do other things. Also interesting to look into is the use by the government of the information from the business register, because of course many other parts of the government will use the business register data in their processes. I mean, the statistical office is of course one example, but there are many parts of the government that do that. Here is also a question whether or not the government can use the information for free, or that they have to pay for the information themselves in the same way other users pay for the information from the registry. And that, of course, depends on the funding model which has been chosen. And what you see over the last couple of years is a strong development towards what is called the once only principle. The idea behind that is ask once, use many, which means that there is a mandatory use of information, reuse of information between government agencies, and not ask the same information from a company or a citizen twice, in a sense that if you have the information available from the business register and you are, for example, the tax office, you can only ask additional information which is really not in the registry already. Otherwise, a company can tell you, this is my business register number, go find the information there. Final slide, I think, on the differences about the dissemination of information from the registry. By definition, the information is always public information. That does not mean that it's always for free. There are quite a few countries and a growing amount of countries where the information from the register is available for free, or at least the basic data is for free. But it also depends very much on the amount of available data, very basic or really a huge amount of information available. Almost all the business registers now have a proper website where you can look for information and usually find details on the entity. And of course, it also depends there if you have partially it for free and the rest is paid, or the full information is available for free. Sometimes there are registers that really use restrictions on the reuse of data, so that you can, for example, only use it for your own processes and not resell the information. And there are even a few countries where the information from the register is only available through some commercial service providers instead of directly from the register itself. So that was enough about all of the differences between registers. If we focus a little bit on the EU as an example of how things are organized for the group of countries in Europe, there is the so-called First Company Law Directive, which regulate things around the companies with share capital. The basic idea is to provide transparency for people doing business with other companies. So there is an obligation to disclose information which is based on this company law directive, which then is implemented in national law, which means that the member states all have to keep a registry, which information that is available to the public. And the important thing is what I already said at one of the earlier slides, that companies or entities or even the public may rely on properly disclosed information toward third parties. That is one of the major objectives of the business register, which is regulated already here on the European level. But also that the identifying data always has to be published in all the publications a company does, so that users of information will always be able to go to the registry and find the information on such a company as quick as possible. A few things about the international cooperation. between business registers. Currently, there are 4 major registry associations around the world. You can see the 4 here. One in Europe, one with a global coverage, which started out in the Asia Pacific region and the former Commonwealth countries, which now covers quite a bit of the globe, I must say. You have IACA, which has mainly members from the US and Canada. Also, some international members are there. And the newest one since a couple of years is the Association for Latin America and the Caribbean. All of them have their own activities, but you could say that the main activities of these 4 organizations are to at least host an annual conference where business register items are being discussed, new developments in legislation, things like that. There are working groups within the organizations. For example, in IBRA, the European one, you find a specific working group on the ultimate beneficial ownership, where the registries are working together to discuss how European legislation should be implemented and how they can do that in the best way, how they can learn from each other. And finally, what's also quite interesting is that already since I think almost 20 years now, there is an international register survey which was started by the European organization and is now a joint project of all 4 organizations. And they used to publish a rather thick report every year, but they have now switched to having it fully digital, available on their website through a business intelligence software, so that you can see a lot of the outcome directly in all kinds of graphs and things like that. Very interesting to have a look at through the website of these organizations. Then there is also specifically on the data exchange a lot of international cooperation. EBR, European Business Register, which is currently now since 4 years or something managed by IBRA, is a platform where currently 16 registers from Europe provide information and exchange information between clients, give the opportunity to their clients in their country to use data from the business register from other countries. This has been around for almost 25 years now, and was the big example for BRIS, which you see at the bottom of the page. But I also like to mention BifiDex, which is a specific platform for the exchange of information in the Southeastern Europe region, where registers from 5 countries cooperate. There have been quite a couple of discussions with the registries in Canada, but also in the ASEAN region for similar projects. And after the establishment of a new directive in Europe, also the BRIS system, the Business Register Interconnection System, came to life, where there is now a single platform which is like a central index for the information on companies in the EEA countries, which means that it's only data from companies and no other legal forms, because it's based on the company law directive, and it will always redirect you to the national register to be able to really find the data itself instead of providing those immediately. Last slide, because I said a few things on the registration authorities, the business registers around the world. I also would like to draw your attention to the fact that on the GLIFE website, we manage what we call the registration authority list, an overview of more than 1,000 business registers and other registration authorities around the world, so that it facilitates everybody to find information from a register in a country as quick as possible. That concludes my presentation for the moment. And I am stopping now to share my screen. And I think we move on with a next presentation, and we take questions at the end when Ivo is also managing the question and answers session. So our next speaker is Monica Canafolia from the Uncitral organization, which you see in the background behind her, the beautiful wall. She is a legal officer there at the UN Office of Legal Affairs. She has served as a secretary of the Uncitral Working Group on micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises during the preparation of various legal texts supporting the formation and operation of small businesses. Before joining the Office of Legal Affairs, Monica served in other UN entities dealing with labor rights, children's rights, and training of UN staff. And she is a qualified lawyer in Italy, where she is from. Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rico, and good morning, New York. Really, it's very early for you. Good afternoon to Europe, perfectly convenient time, and good evening to Asia Pacific, where it's, again, probably not so convenient. Thank you. I will share my screen before starting my presentation. Okay, I hope you can see the screen, and I will a little bit build on what part on what Rico has just presented, a very comprehensive and interesting presentation. And I will be focusing on the UNCITRAL legislative guides on key principle of a business registry that was adopted in 2018. This is a legacy, let's see whether, okay. This slide is a legacy of the previous webinar, just to remind those who were at who attended that webinar what the guide is about, and just to provide a quick snapshot to those who were not at that webinar. The guide is a soft legislative text that was negotiated by UNCITRAL member states. So it's not just a result of the work of the Secretariat of UNCITRAL, which is the office I am working in. And at the very beginning, Stefano said that, from a statistics perspective, business registers are important because they are a data repository. From a legal perspective, an economic perspective, business registry and business registration is important because they promote the formalization of the businesses, of companies, and other types of businesses, not always only companies, as one of Rico's slides was showing up. And the purpose of the guide is exactly this one, to streamline, to propose a model of business registration, simple, user-friendly, that should help states to create a sound environment for business, for businesses, and in particular to help micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises to formalize, which is always very painful for them because it's time-consuming and many times is quite expensive. In many jurisdictions can be quite expensive. So this is our perspective. Yes, the registry, the business registry guide recognizes that the registries are important repository of data, And the view, it's in the other view that the guide takes is that they need to function well and in an efficient way because they can help lots of small businesses to enter the formal economy. One simple thing, the guide is not meant for MSMEs. The guide does not suggest that we should create two separate tracks. There is only one business registry, only one business registration system, but it should be MSMEs friendly. This slide, sorry, I'm having problem with the slide, with the arrows. This is also a legacy from the previous webinar, just to highlight, and I'm not going to go through this again, and just to highlight the key features of a business registry according to the guide. Key features should be accessibility, very good quality of the system, simplified procedures for registration, and efficient operation of the registries. And this I discussed a little bit what the guide recommends about one-stop shop, use of unique identifiers, and fully electronic registration. What I'm going to focus on in the next few slides and in this presentation is actually what sort of legal and institutional reforms are important for an efficient business registry. We have already heard from Rico that there are different models of organizing a business registry. Certain registries are operated by the states. Other registries are located under the oversight of the court. And this, when we prepare the guide, when the guide was prepared, seemed to be the two main models. Oversight of the government, direct oversight of the government, the registry as an entity, as an agency of the government or a component of a part of a ministry, and the registry as under the direct oversight of the court, of the judges. There were other models that you saw in Rico's slide, like, for example, public and private partnerships, or other forms of outsourcing the organization and the running of the management of the registry to private entity. The approach chosen by the guide was that the decision on who operates and runs the registry on a daily basis is for the state to take based on the state dynamics, on the economic situation, on the policy issues that the states needs to face. But the important thing is that whoever operates the registry, whatever entity is appointed to operate the registry, the state maintains the final competence on the registry. The state may not be responsible for and accountable for the day-to-day operation of the registry, but the law should clarify and make it clear that the final responsibility of the state, of the functioning of the registry is of the state. And the state should retain control on the right to access and to the data and use of the data that are in the registry. Another aspect that the guide looks at is of course, the powers, the authority of the registrar. Sometimes in the preparation of the guide, the discussion of the member states found that there were unclear boundaries to the responsibilities in certain jurisdictions, unclear boundaries on their duties and the authority of the registrar. Sometimes where some sort of discretionary powers of the registrar, like setting fees, deciding whether to accept or not applications for registration. So based on the experience of jurisdictions that had already improved their systems, the guide has taken a very clear approach, in the sense that, again, the law of the domestic law, the law of the state, should clearly specify the procedures to appoint and to dismiss a registrar, should clearly identify the entity that has the oversight on the registrar, and the entity within the government authorities that is authorized to appoint and dismiss the registrars, and also determine the registrar's powers and duties, to what extent such powers and duties can be delegated to other persons working with the registrar. One very important aspect is that the guide specified that a registrar needs not to be a physical person. A registrar can also be a legal person, not necessarily Mr. or Mrs. X, but also a legal entity that is established to run the registry. There was a lot of discussion in the working group about the role of the judges and the notaries and lawyers. As I said at the beginning, one of the most common forms, at least until a few years ago when we were preparing the guide, was in many jurisdictions that the registry was under the oversight of a court. And it was there was evidence. It was noted that this could result in longer procedures, higher costs. However, there were also examples of jurisdictions where the fact that the registry was within a court was actually efficient and was an effective way of managing business registration. So while the guide didn't take a firm point on this, there are no recommendations in the guide on whether and to what extent the judiciary should be involved. And many times, by the way, having a registry under the oversight of the judiciary involves the participation of notaries or lawyers in the registration process. That can also lead to additional steps or increase the costs. However, as I said, since there were also examples, like, for example, Rico presented Germany and France, where this system seems to work, the guide did not recommend any specific approach on the involvement of the judiciary or the notaries, and left this to the states. Noting, however, that many countries, an increasing number of countries, were moving towards were moving registration outside the court. So really towards more a kind of an administrative approach. One very important aspect here, this is a very legal, extremely legal discussion on this one, but in several jurisdictions, it's still quite common to ask business that wants to register to formalize for to deposit a minimum capital with a bank or a notary before registration, and even up to 3 months afterwards. I'm not going to get into a discussion on this. The reason is to kind of protect investors and clients of startups. This is clearly a constraint for potential businesses, in particular for small businesses, for MSMEs, because they might not have that amount of money to commit. Considering that in many jurisdictions, the amount of money that you have to deposit is the same, regardless the size of the business. Could be the same for an MSMEs and for a larger business, a larger corporation. So the legislative guide, and this is the issue of capital requirement, is an issue that creates a problem in business registration. So this aspect was dealt with very clearly in another UNCITRAL guide, the UNCITRAL guide on limited liability enterprises, that is linked to the UNCITRAL guide on business registration. This guide on limited liability enterprises, adopted 2 years ago, clearly recommends the abolishing the minimum capital requirement. The guide on business registration does not have a specific recommendation on the capital requirement, but encourages in various and different paragraphs the use of alternative means. For example, solvency tests on the startups, auditing reports on startups, etc., to protect creditors of the startup or new clients, and clearly discourages the use of a minimum capital requirement. Another aspect that is particularly important is the creation, in particular for small businesses, important to facilitate registration, is the establishment of simplified legal forms for small businesses. A rigid legal form, if you can only register as a limited liability corporation, for example, this makes registration many times difficult or impossible for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, because it's a very rigid form that requires very rigid way of organizing the business. It's not just a matter of cost, but how the business needs to be run afterwards. So the legislative guide noted that in many countries with a very good registration rates also of micro and small businesses, where those countries where simplified legal forms were created. And simplified legal forms for business could be corporate, partnership, hybrid type, could be single member or multi-member, but are super simplified forms for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises that do not require the enterprises to comply with those obligations that are typical of bigger establishment, bigger commercial establishments. And in this case, again, as you can see in the square brackets below, there were several examples of successful, not necessarily in the usual suspects developed countries, but in countries where the simplified business forms facilitated and increased business registration. Almost last, but not least, the importance of reforming, cleaning up, clarifying underlying laws. They are not just the laws that are directly applicable to the business registry, but also those laws that in a way affect business registration. That could be, for example, laws that you find in the civil code, you can find in the commercial, in the company laws, in the commercial laws chapter of the code, for example. And these laws could be too cumbersome, too complex, outdated, even, as I said, too complex to apply to small and medium-sized enterprises. So it is important, and this is what the legislative guide recommends, that those laws are simplified, possibly are consolidated in a way that is clear, and in particular should be consolidated those articles and those laws that concern business registration. And as an example here, I could give the example of a country like Chile that improved the clarity of the law in two steps. So first introduced started with an inventory of the laws, and then introduced a first aspect, the first part of the improving the registration environment that focused on the system of publishing information, incorporation, modification, and dissolution in the official gazette. That system was replaced with a much more modern system, and then started looking at the incorporation and started looking at the company law and simplified that aspect too. One thing that I would like to highlight here is the importance, and this of laws concerning electronic registration. I presented those laws a little bit, the approach at the previous webinar. Here, I would simply like to clarify, to highlight, first of all, the importance to have, highlight again the importance to have laws promoting electronic registration. And those laws should be laws that clarify the functional equivalence between written documents and online documents, written signatures and online signatures. And the second aspect here, it is important that in order to take into consideration the evolution of technology, which is quite fast, main laws, the primary legislation, that is, these are the laws that are adopted in the parliament by the legislature, should mainly look at the principles, should not look at the details of an online system. Those details of online systems that are, in any event, legal issues, I'm not talking of technical issues, should be left to policy acts, should be left to regulations, should be left to decrees, should be left to those documents, those types of acts that we define as secondary legislation, that are quicker and faster to adopt. Last but not least, an element to improve the efficiency of the registry is to improve the skills, but also the motivation of the registry staff. Sometimes poor services of the registry are linked to lack of resources. Sometimes are lack of skills in the registry staff. Sometimes is also low motivation, because maybe as a public office, maybe there are no sufficient economic incentives or other incentives, at least in certain countries. So the legislative guide highlights the importance to build and constant and regularly improve staff skills, also to reduce, to improve the services, to reduce errors in operating the business registries, and sometimes even to reduce possibility of corruption and frauds. There are different examples of how to build and increase the capacity of the registry staff in the guide, starting from the more traditional ones like training programs, tutorials, etc., going to team building, role playing, joining forces with other departments of the government, in particular when the reform of the business registry involves the use of unique identifiers, for example, involve increased interoperability between different registration entities. There is an emphasis on peer-to-peer learning, so visit to other registries. And last but not least, and here we go back again to what Rico was showed in his presentation, also the importance to join international forums, international networks like IACA, CRF, and others that are also they also perform a training function. They can also perform a training indirectly, training function for less developed jurisdictions. One last comment that is highlighted in the guide, also the importance to build the skills of intermediaries like notaries and lawyers in those jurisdictions where the intermediaries are necessary for registering a business. And with that, I thank you. Give the floor back to Rico, and happy to get and take your questions in the final part of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. And after providing you with a lot of basics, I would say, we now go to a concrete situation and talk about the experience from Uganda. Arthur Kweziga is the Director of ICT and Innovation at the Uganda Registration Services Bureau, which is the government agency responsible for business registration, intellectual property registration, and marriage registration in Uganda. Arthur holds a bachelor degree in computer science, a master in IT and international business, and a master of law in patent and design law. Over the last couple of years, URSB transitioned from a traditional paper-centric model to a digitally enabled institution, setting it as one of Africa's innovative registries. The emphasis on data-driven strategies has promoted efficiency and established a culture of data use and sharing, underscoring its critical role in business transformations. So, Arthur, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rico Dan, for the opportunity and for the good introduction. I hope I'm audible. Can you hear me? Yes, I will share our experience as Uganda in regard to unique identifiers for businesses. So the first is to tell you about Uganda Registration Services Bureau. It's an agency of government. Next slide, please. An agency of government responsible for business registration, intellectual property registration, and we are also the official receiver. We handle bankruptcy and liquidation matters. And we also handle a unique mandate of civil registration. We also manage a marriage register. So when you have to be married in Uganda, you have to appear in our office if it's a civil marriage, but also we maintain the marriage register for the whole country. In addition, we collect non-revenue, non-tax revenue, but we collect it to the consolidated account. So we don't collect money directly, and then the government, the central, the Ministry of Finance allocates money to us to run our operations. Next. Yeah, so introduction of unique business identifiers. So we look at unique business identifiers as a standardized and streamlined approach to business identification globally. You know, when individuals are traveling, even when they have identity systems, but they also have a passport to enable them to move all over the world. So we also look at UBIs as the passport of a business. So the core purpose is to reduce barriers to international business transactions. And the unification objective is to create a universal language that is understood globally to enable business transactions. Next. So what is the importance of UBIs? Enhanced government oversight. When you have a unique identifier, I always want to compare it with the national identification system for individuals. So this is also similar for businesses. So it enhances government oversight. It also ensures business efficiency because there's reduced bureaucracy, because the business can easily be identified. And most importantly, it enhances transparency and trust because it establishes a clear audit trail for corporate activities, boosting confidence among consumers, investors, and partners. So it is critical for investment. Next. So when you look at the global overview, is that different jurisdictions have different systems, like the US and the Germany have the different systems, but you observe some similarities because they all aim at transparency and streamlining operations, focused on enhancing tax collection and regulatory compliance. We have also the implementation differences because some jurisdictions run alphanumeric systems, others run numeric systems, and even they have diverse governing bodies. You find some places the business register is responsible also for issuing identifiers for other foundations, associations, and government agencies, but you find in other jurisdictions there is an independent authority that issues identifiers, and then other institutions use it to run their operations. Next. So key motivations for unique business identifier implementation. We have already talked about tax compliance. Really, you cannot have tax compliance without UBI. Then, of course, there is registration efficiency because there is a streamlined legal business registration process and providing a standard efficient registration procedure like the one-stop center, because this enables when you are registering a business, you also want tax registration, you also want to have a trading license or social security registration. So the moment we receive the information, we just share with these different authorities, and they already know that this entity exists, and they use that identifier to identify the similar business in their systems. So there is improved service delivery, and most importantly also is better regulatory governance. You have a better view of understanding that these entities exist, and this is the state of their situation. Thank you. Next. So the best practices that we have observed is that there is strategic implementation where it can be phased, where you find that the business register is only in charge of companies and business names. You may start with a business register, but also there are associations, non-government organizations, there are government entities, there are other many non-individuals that are involved in trading, but they are not housed in the business register. So because the business register really has the majority of the non-individual entities or the legal entities, it is important that you start with the business register institution, and then you start bringing on other institutions. Like in our case for Uganda, we have already agreed that we should have all non-individuals into one register. But we started implementation with only the business registration institution. So it is important. You may not do it at once because it may even require a legal framework, change management. So start with the institution that has majority of the non-individuals, and then you move to the others. Then data governance, data privacy and access data is critical point in UBI. Many institutions really want to keep hold because the idea is that register in one entity and then share data. So sometimes there are issues associated with the data governance, and you have to really ensure that you are talking the same language with other institutions. I have already said you need a legal framework if a specialist is going to cross to other institutions that are established by law. Like in our case for Uganda, we have the law establishing that trustees is different, non-government organizations, cooperatives, all these are housed in different institutions. But for us as URSB, we are in charge of companies and business names. So it is important that you look at having a legal framework that covers all non-individuals. Then there is also capacity building, where you need to create capacity to ensure that you have the teams that are able to run this system. Next. So now I go to the, I think there is a previous one, you move faster. Okay, the key challenges in UBI implementation. Yes, next, key challenges. You have low levels of business diversity development in communities breed suspicion. You find that, next slide, please. There is cultural resistance. That's why I'm emphasizing that you have to make sure that it is phased implementation. Most key challenges, legacy systems. You have difficulty integrating with legacy systems because really UBI is about systems integration, because the business register will handle the registration and shares data with other institutions. So that is very critical. Then there is legal and technical obstacles. Please, previous slide. Legal and technical obstacles, because you need really a legal environment to support the UBI implementation. Then we have the key challenge also of data quality and consistency. Really, like in our case for Uganda, we just recently had in 2016 a national identification for persons, but businesses exist way before. So we are in the process of cleaning up data to make sure that all the data in the business register can have data about proper identification of persons. So the challenge of data quality is critical. So we are going through the process of updating all data in the register to bring in information, especially the national ID, to identify individuals. So what are the key foundations? You need, for us in our country, in Uganda, the success factor was let people talk before systems talk. So there was a program called Taxpayer Register Expansion Program, where the tax authority, the registration authority, and the licensing authority come together and work on one program of working together. So that program is still ongoing, and it has been a success because our principle has always been let people talk before systems talk. So when people are talking, they look at the same direction, have the same vision, so it helps to ensure implementation. So even if we are going to have a challenge of legal, you have these key institutions working on the legal reform. So also the program objective was very clear that we have to reduce formalization, improve tax compliance, and access to financial services. And then the structural framework was aimed at facilitating business registration, monitoring, and taxation processes. Next. So the implementation, the success is we had integrated operations where the systems of the tax authority, registration authority, and licensing authority are integrated. So once we register an entity, we share data with the tax authority, and immediately they notify the business owner that you have been registered for tax. We also observe efficiency enhancements where business registration processes have been strengthened, reducing bureaucratic hurdles for both local and foreign businesses. And mostly we have also more reliable business statistics. Next. So the Uganda approach was really aiming at interagency synergy, collaboration of government agencies. And here we are emphasizing key government institutions, where we emphasize the tax authority, the registration authority, the one in charge of identification, and the licensing authority. Then leveraging existing databases like the national ID is very, very critical. And then public engagement. You have to ensure that you communicate efficiently to the public. So this collaboration with these institutions, moving, undertaking joint projects on collaboration, on public engagement helped a lot in enhancing the success of this UBI implementation. Next. So our UBI structure is there. It is a 14-digit number. When you get on our website, you can have a look at it, because we also have free access to basic data. When you get to our website, obrs.ursb.go.ug, you have access to the basic data about a business, and that includes the registration number, which starts with 800, because that is the ISO 3166 numeric number, and then it is followed by 11 digit numbers. We don't embed any data. And then lastly, we have a check digit, which is the last digit. So this, we regard it as a structure that meets the international standard. Next. So the success of UBI in Uganda, we have largely benefited from the TREP, which is a collaboration of key institutions working together. And then business community has streamlined business registration and the regulatory processes, enhanced data sharing and access to financial services. And then we also have economic advantages of growth in entrepreneurship, positive effects on the country's economic data, and then international exchange of data. Next. So what are the lessons learned, insights from our implementation? Importance of stakeholder engagement and public awareness, then continuous updating and maintaining of UBI database. That's why we are saying we are on a campaign where we demand every business owner to update the information that he has on our register. Adoption of a phased implementation is critical. Encouragement of public-private partnerships to enhance system integration. We are now looking at integrating our system with the financial institutions. Then international perspective like this one of learning from global best practices and adapting to local context, and the necessity of international collaboration in standardizing the UBI. Next. So what are my concluding remarks? It is like UBIs and modern is associated with the modern economy, and a modern registry has to have a unique business identifier. I have said I compare this also to the individuals where they have national identifications or passports, where it is central to improving global business transparency, because now globally registries are looking at sharing information, especially the issue of beneficial ownership is critical to sharing information globally. Then facilitators of international trade and economic cooperation. And then the call to action is encourage adoption of UBIs for sustainable economic development. Emphasize the role of UBIs in enhancing the digitization of economies. I should have said that the UBI implementation is really an ICT project. It's a digitization matter. Because it has to be a system that allows businesses to apply and then generate that identifier. And then we need to strengthen the importance of ongoing dialogue and knowledge exchange to understand how to standardize more through sharing experiences. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arthur, for your nice insights in the situation in Uganda, which make things much more concrete than we were speaking about before. So that's really nice to be able to see that. We are moving now to the Dutch Statistical Office, where, and to confuse everybody with our very similar names, we will be moving to Rico Konen, who will be talking about the use of the business register information in the statistical business registers. Rico joined Statistics Netherlands in 1992, first working on travel behavior statistics. After that, he was responsible for the production and publication of business demography statistics. And since 2010, he works as an expert on business registers, including, for example, the communication on methodological aspects of business registers. Rico, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'm trying to share my screen, but I'm not sure if it's going to happen because analyze. Okay, I still have problems by sharing. Can you see something?
I don't see a presentation yet.
Okay.
You have to open the slides first in PowerPoint, and then you click share the application PowerPoint.
Yes, I'm now struggling and I'm panicking now.
It's okay.
So because
Only take a few seconds.
I can see, but if I click on share, I have a problem. So
if you send me the presentation, then I will share it for you.
Yes, if that's possible. Just a minute.
Please, for everybody. Also, if you already have some questions you would like to discuss, you can put them in the chat, of course. Then we can have a look at that and we can discuss it when we have the Q&A session after the next two presentations, or even answer things in the chat immediately when possible. So please use that possibility as well. And then Rico, now sending your slides to Hank so that we can see them coming from him.
Okay. Okay.
The presentation is coming in, so let's see.
Are you able to share, Hank?
I think I am. One moment.
Okay.
Is now in.
I will make you a presenter then, Hank. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jerry. Now I'm
see him now, yeah?
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Rico, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, please. Then next slide, please, because this is obvious. So, and first I want to tell you something about our administrative registers. So, next slide. So, and our little back, one back. Okay, thank you. So, the first thing I want to tell you is a little bit about the administrative system. In order to be able to understand more about the identifications and how we use them in our statistical business register, it's very useful to know how our system is organized. And we have this system of basic registrations in the Netherlands. This started at around 2000. They started to organize all the information we have in the several registers, and we assigned some authentic variables to specific registers. For example, the name and the sex of a civilian is only registered in the civilian, in the basic register of the population of the civilians. So this is on the left here. On the other side, we have another basic register for example, for cars. We have something for businesses. We also have something for property. We have some maps. These are all business registers, and they somehow are interlinked. And this linkage is done with some identification. So, and that means, for example, if we have the trade register for registering businesses, then if we have a sole proprietor, then he is, as an owner, he is registered with a civilian number in the basic register of the trade register. So maybe let me focus more a little bit on the trade register, maybe next. That's this one. This is a basic registration. If you want to know more about this basic registration and how this works, in 2016 I did a presentation at the Wiesbaden group in Japan, in Tokyo at that time. And you can click on the paper if you have the presentation, and you can look at it further. And I also added an updated version of the basic registration in 2020, because this was 2016. So, and just click on the link and then you can see it. But the only thing is that it's the only information that's available is in Dutch and not in English. So, okay, let me focus more a little bit on the business registers side and on the trade register in this respect, because this is where it's all about. Okay, maybe click again. Okay. And how are these, what kind of identifications are there in this trade register to do the communication? And one of the most important identification are, of course, the identification of the owner of the business and the business itself. And the owner of the business can be either a natural person or a legal person. And these have an own 9-digit identification number, and if you are a natural person, you are also identified with the same civilian number as in the population register for sole proprietors in this case. The legal business is the activity in society, and all the activity is assigned to it, but also other information about relationships are assigned to these numbers. So furthermore, we have, of course, establishments. And establishment can be a property, and this is linked to another basic administration. We have and the trade register, they keep and maintain these numbers also as so that is always that is always able to link to another basic registration. As last and not least, maybe nice to remember that the Chambers of Commerce is one of the organizations who may provide the legal entity identification number of the GLEIF organization. So we also keep that for each of the Dutch legal businesses entered in the trade register. Okay, so this is a little bit a short overview about the numbering in this. The first three are the most important in our Dutch business, in our statistical business register. Maybe next slide, Hank. So, and how does this all? I already said. We have a legal business. It either is commercial or it is non-commercial, because we also had to, because also governmental organizations, museums, or whatever, everything where there is money involved or people working, they are obliged to register in the business, in the trade register. And each legal business also has a business owner, and this business owner is either a natural or legal person. And on the side of the business owner, he is obliged to register, of course, because of his responsibility, and therefore he has to register his legal form to be responsible for his actions. So, next slide, please. Okay, so and then we have, of course, this system that provides our information and store the information, but we also have these users. And one of the users are, of course, Statistics Netherlands, and another user is, for example, the tax office. For the trade register, we call this also, we are in an organization, we call this in the big three. The big three users of the trade registers are the tax office, the Statistics Netherlands, and the Ministry of Justice is also a big user. But the tax office is, of course, a very important user because they also provide information, for example, about taxes on VAT, on value added, or on profit information. And this information is very important to use in statistics to be more efficient in your data collection. So how does this work? Okay, we have business owners, and business owners are identified. Depend on whether you are a natural or legal person. If you're a natural person, you adjust your civilian number. Legal person, it's a 9-digit legal business number. So, okay, legal number, so I say. So, and how does this work? If you are if you have to pay taxes, you can see on the right box, on the box below, you can see when you get a VAT number, and this VAT number is always consists of your country, your ISO 3162 country number, 2-digit. You got a 9-digit number of your natural of legal person number, and you got a sequence number for the assigning to the activities you have to pay taxes for. In this case, your value added tax. If you have taxes on profit, then it's a little bit different, but the number is somehow the same. We have the 2-digit number of the country code, and we have a 9-digit number of the natural or legal person who is paying the taxes for about profits for a group of for the money that is made profit. And the third kind of information about taxes is, of course, the payroll taxes, and the payroll taxes are more or less similar. All the employees, they have to pay taxes in the Netherlands, and then they are close cooperating, of course, with the Social Security Administration, and this number is also 2-digit number of the country code. 9 digits is always the same, which assigns to the employer in this case, and then a sequence number to pay the taxes or to report the declaration on. So on the other side, we also have the tax office also has something that is in because in the Netherlands we have a lot of structures of businesses, of single businesses who own the shares or receive the shares of profit from another business. And these relationships, in this case, you are allowed to consolidate the information on turnover between more than one businesses. So, and if you do that, you may apply for the tax office to get a fiscal unit relationship to pay your value added tax. And that means that you can pay that one organizational part is paying taxes for more single businesses in the Netherlands. And in this way, the tax for VAT are reported on the fiscal unit side. So this number, this fiscal unit ID, can either be assigned to a natural person, to a legal person, or to a fiscal unit relationship to consolidate information on turnover. Yeah. Okay. On the last side, we also have this corporate tax ID, and in that case, this is also assigned to a group. And in most cases, because we have this structures, and one is the parent of another and gets the information on profits and received it in terms of shares, and therefore it's allowed also to consolidate some of this information to lower the amount to pay the taxes. So these are fiscal rules, but the tax office is also, in this way, the tax office uses the information from the trade register, registered in the trade register, to do their own job. So the next slide. And the next slide, so we see here, if we got an example, you can see, okay, we got all these numbers on the left side. These are all legal persons registered in the trade register. And on the right side, you can see the identification of the reporter that reports of all these of all the units on the left side. So, and this is for the VAT, that means consolidating the information on the limited on the left side, and for the corporate tax, this means that there is a structure in this in between these legal businesses, and these structures, they for this light blue corporate tax one, they profit on the yeah, they have to report on the profits for all these units. And some of them, and these are the colored one, the other colored one, and they do their declaration by their own. So this is a little bit the users of the next slide, please. So now the statistical businesses, because Statistics Netherlands is another big user. And how do we use the information in the or why do we have a statistical business register overall? So, and then this, maybe you can click on the left page, Hank, on annual reports. And if you click on annual reports, then it should open a website, and then you can see the annual account of just a big company in the Netherlands. Just accept. And if you can see also the list of participations, and because this annual report is about the subsidiaries and the participants. And this list of participations, you can click on it, on this, because you're on the website. On the
What do you want me to click on now?
You have to click on list of participations.
Deze?
Yeah.
This one, okay.
And if you open this, you get the list. If you scroll down, you get a worldwide list of all the participants, where this annual accounts are about. So if you scroll down to the Netherlands now, because this is what we have, so the Netherlands, so there you can see about 20 legal businesses that are also part of this annual accounts. And it's very important for us in the Netherlands, it's very important to have these 20, to have the structure of these 20 legal businesses in our statistical business register, because only in that way we can use all the information what is consolidated by the complete concern. So if we go back to the presentation, okay, then we can see on the right side, this are these same units. If we are moving on, next slide, okay, then you can see that we can make in our business register, in the statistical business register, we have from our information from our sources, we have on the left side, we have the complete structure as also in the annual report, and you can see that on the left side. And that means that, for example, the Wolters Kluwer NV, they keep all the shares and get all the information about profits and all the profits from the underlying units. And so you can see this is a tree structure which would show how the transactions in a complete concern are managed. And you can see on the right side, you can see that it always are, all these numbers are all the numbers of the single businesses in our business register. So on the right side, you can see the statistical units. We are going to group this information from these tree structures. On the right side, we are making our enterprises out of it. And we do this by applying profiling techniques. So we are looking and we are talking to the accountant of the large concern, and we try to make a structure that we can gather and use as much as possible information from the tax office, but also from other organizations, just to report it and to link it to the information of the enterprises in our business registers. So this is the transition from, on the one side, the administrative data, on the other side to the statistical data. So you can see that here in our business register. So if you move on, you can see that. So these are 7 enterprises what we are created. So, and what are we doing with these information? What we are trying to do is we are trying to combine sources, and the combination of sources, this is one of the main advantages to improve the information on the legal unit what we have in our business register. And therefore it's very important that every source communicates by the same identifications and registers its characteristics on the same identification, on the same units and identified by it. So, and this, for example, you can see we have the legal unit in our business register. We take them over from the trade register because this is one-on-one. We only provide our own identification to it. But then it's important to assign, to use all the information, what is better in other sources, to use it to define the characteristics on the legal unit in the statistical business register. And this is what you can see here. We use information from the governmental statistics, we use information from survey, from the national bank, from the trade register itself, from the tax administration, from the persons employed, from the social security, and the profiler can also add some extra information to it. So you have different sources. But for this, it is very important that you have that the communication is on the same identification, that the units are uniquely identified throughout the complete administrative system. So, because otherwise, this is not true. This is not possible. Sometimes you have to overrule some variables in your business register, and therefore we have some other. So you have to prioritize some variables because you know that the information from the profiler is best. Maybe the information from the social security is better on employment than the information from the trade register you receive. So you have to you have to prioritize from what is the best quality of your variable to keep and maintain in your business register. This is what we do here. Please, next, Hank. So we also do this with the relationships because I already said we have this structure, we have these relationships. Our trade register only registers single shareholders, so only keep 100% of the shares. If you do not keep the 100% of the shares, you are not registered in the trade register. So we can keep this record in our statistical business register. But luckily, we have also these fiscal relationships from these fiscal units, and we keep this as an extra relationship in our business register to complete the structure as you just saw on the company I showed you. So this is how we use also. If you do not have a unique numbering system, then this is hardly impossible to create such databases or create such files for one big business concern. So okay, the next one. So, and how does this work? We have to make statistical units now. Also provided just a minute. So how do we do this? We have this legal unit, in this case 7 pieces. The first one, if you click on it, Hank, we have the next one also. We have to you have to know how many of the shares are controlled by another business in this case. And from these control relationships, we can create a cluster of control. So next one, Hank. This cluster of control, there are 3 clusters in this case because there's no control when there is less than 51%, so 50 or 51 or less, 50% or less. And then you can see that you have 3 clusters of control. We have, and therefore these clusters of control we make enterprise groups. Yeah, enterprise groups, because this is also in the definition of enterprise group as a statistical unit. Next one, Hank.
Rico, quick question. How much slides do you still have?
How many?
Yeah, slides, because we're
running. Yeah, I'm almost done.
Okay.
I'm almost done. So, and from this enterprise groups, we have to split it into enterprises. So you can see we are making some enterprises out of it. And the next one, Hank. So, and this is a complete overview of the things I just told you. We have our sources on the left. We have we're making administrative users. They are standardized. The next one is make the best, combine the information from administrative sources as good as possible to make choices for the best characteristics, and then derive the statistical units which are can be used in statistics. Next one. Hank. So then we have to have this also integrated in our business architecture from how do we make statistics. And there you can see the statistical business registers plays a central role in linking different types of information to the units in the business register. But this is only happening when you have the information on unique identifiers guaranteed. Okay, next, Hank. That's it. That was my presentation.
All right, Rico, thank you very much to give an insight in how you use all the data in your statistical business register and especially building all these group structures. Then we will be going to the final presentation of today. And I'd like to welcome Peter Nielsen. I'm leaving out your middle name because I have no idea how to pronounce that properly. Peter is the former head of division at Statistics Denmark, covering structural business statistics, innovation, globalization, and entrepreneurship. Peter now works as a consultant for Statistics Denmark, focusing on establishing a so-called data warehouse for business statistics, and he is also involved in the different activities of the UN SEPTS group. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll see if I'm more lucky in sharing my screen. Let me see, I'm not there. I need to see if it's this one, I think.
That works.
Can you see it now?
Yes, it is there.
It works. Okay, I'll just. Yeah, good. Okay, my presentation is perhaps from a, you could say, a slightly different angle, or in a way from where Rico stopped his presentation, as this is more seen from a user perspective in the sense of a user of the business register, and especially, of course, a user of unique identifiers to be used in the production of statistics. So I'm going to tell you about our initiative on linking microdata. And what do I mean by microdata linking? It is a linking of statistical registers at uni level. Normally it would be business level via the statistical business register. So to speak, the statistical business register is seen as the backbone of this exercise, as it contains, first of all, in the case of Denmark here, a unique ID number, and a link to that ID number. There are some of the traditional basic information in the business register as industry, location, etc., etc. Then, very importantly, the same ID number is also used by our different statistical domains. So it's integrated in the different statistical registers. So this allows us via the statistical business register to link different statistical registers at enterprise, or what you call business level. For instance, structural business statistics can be linked with foreign trade and goods statistics as one example. So you will get information about do we see a higher gross value added creation in exporting firms than in non-exporting firms, to take one example of a policy relevant issue to be analyzed. So this is just an example of a few of the registers, but in principle we can do it with all our registers in business statistics.
Peter, a quick question.
What is the reason for us to have? Sorry,
Peter,
yes.
quick question. I still see your main
Can you hear me?
title slide and not other slides.
Okay, because I'm now on slide 3. Is that the same for all of you? Let me see if I go down here. What do you see now?
Still
Still?
the same first page.
Peter, you need to, yes, start the slides. Click slideshow and then begin. In the menu.
Sorry, what again? What did you say? What should I do?
Click in the menu, slideshow. Yes, and then start. Or we can run the slide on our side for you.
Can you see it now?
No, not showing up.
No.
Do you have the slides as well, Jerry?
Yes, I do. Shall I run the slide for you, Peter, then?
Maybe that's the quickest option. If you share the slides, Jerry, then...
Okay, sure.
Can you, that might be, you should have them.
Yes, I do. I'm showing
Isn't it
up.
so?
I'm trying to show the slide on my side then.
Yep.
Okay.
Show. Yeah, it is.
That's perfect.
Okay, sorry. Okay, if you take the next slide, please.
There it is.
Yes, that was the one where I explained about the linkage between the different registers, that we're using the statistical business register as the backbone for our exercise, and we have the same unique ID number embedded in each of our statistical registers. Okay, let's go on. I know we are a little bit after schedule. So could you take the next one, please? So that's the reasons for microdata linking and why we in statistics and in many other, at least European countries also, are seeing this as a strategic important way of producing statistics in the future. First of all, you can say, which is perhaps a little bit simplified, but we have a production approach, I think, in all statistical offices, which are very much stovepipe type. That means that we produce the different statistics in the different domains to a large extent, I would say, in isolation from one another. So there is a need to get a more holistic view of businesses and their behavior. For instance, again, you can talk about are exporting businesses creating more jobs than non-exporters? To answer that question, you need to link different statistical registers at the level of the business. Perhaps more importantly for us now, and why it's of high strategic importance, that is, we see it as probably the best tool to meet new and emerging user needs in a both swift and a cost-efficient way. So nowadays, statistical offices are often asked by ministries or other users to provide data and evidence about new and emerging issues. And if you would have to first design a survey, carry out the survey, and then after validation have to produce the results, you are probably very late compared to the user needs. We learned that, for instance, during the Corona crisis as well. So that's why we have a focus on microdata linking. It also offers us a possibility of producing more granular statistics than the one you normally publish in the official statistics. And all in all, this makes official statistics more valuable for the users. Also, you could say when you already have collected data and can use the data for new statistical analysis, then you increase the value of the data you have already collected, and you do actually that without raising the respondent burden by launching new surveys. And I think nearly all of us in the NSIs, we are confronted with that policy issue of not raising the respondent burden of the enterprises. We can also say that this way of producing statistics by linking microdata has already proven to be feasible, as we already now have official statistics produced in this manner. So you have the tech statistics trade by enterprise characteristic, which is a statistics based on MDL. Could I have the next one, please? Yes, it's of course not just you link the data and then everything is fine. There are of course always some methodological issues which you need to consider. Of course, first of all, the fundament is that you have identical unique ID numbers which are used both in the statistical business register and across the different statistical domains, as we have in many European countries, actually. Then, of course, you have the issue of unit consistency. I think that was also a bit addressed in the previous presentation. So when you have businesses with a complex legal structure, for instance, in enterprise group, you realize that different ID numbers might be used for reporting in different statistical domains. For instance, it's not the same ID number immediately used for structural business statistics, so accounting information, and for international trade in goods statistics, where it might be a whole unit which will report to the trade statistics, while it's the main headquarter reporting on the accounting issues. Then another issue you have to take into consideration is, of course, that the sampling frame and the populations, they differ across the different statistics, both in terms of activities covered and or in terms of size classes covered. So you will never have a one-to-one match when you do this kind of microdata linking. When you have done your linking, then of course you would be often confronted with the issue of data consistency, that the reported values differ from one statistical domain to the other. There might be very good reasons for that. For instance, different reference periods or different definitions, for instance, of turnover is different from the different statistical domains, or simply that there have been reporting of incorrect values, which has been validated in one statistics, but not in the other. So there are, of course, still issues you need to take into consideration before you can publish your statistics. And if you then want to publish it, you have to address the issue: are we talking about an official statistics, as in the case of the tech statistics, or would you label it as an experimental statistics? Because if it's official statistics, then the reweighting is an issue, because you match and merge different statistical registers where the units would have different weights. So that is a methodological issue which you need to solve. If you then say, okay, it's only experimental statistics and we are only using the observed units which we can match in the different statistics, then of course you might have an issue of the representativity of that experimental statistics. So that's again an issue which you have to carefully investigate before you can publish your data. Can I have the next slide, please? Yes, I have just two examples in order to illustrate what we are doing and what you can achieve by this way of producing statistics. The first one is related to the definition of SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, which are enterprises with less than 250 employees. So the traditional approach and definition we have is the size. What we did was that we said, okay, let's not only look at size, but let's also look at control. So if we have an SME, is this SME then actually an independent SME, or is it part of an enterprise group? This you can do by linking to the information in the business register. We thought that was an important analysis to carry out because SMEs are considered the main source for employment growth, and consequently we have a policy focus on framework condition for SMEs. So when we did this microdata linking by using these types of SMEs, we came to an interesting result. Can I have the next slide, please? Because we linked then the information from the SBR about the control of the SMEs to structural business statistics and to international trade in goods statistics. In here, it's interestingly because in the case of Denmark, for instance, from the policy point of view, SMEs are seen as being very important for Danish exports. If you just take it directly from the statistics, from the tech statistics, you will find that nearly half of all Danish exports are coming from SMEs. What we did then by using these different definitions of SMEs, we actually found out that half of the exports coming from SMEs actually were not independent SMEs. It was just SMEs which were part of large groups. So would you then consider that being SMEs? I think not. So that was very important in understanding the importance of SMEs, or in this case, that they are not that important as policymakers thought. And as you can see here, we did it as a Nordic comparable analysis, and you can see that the SMEs belonging to large groups, they are actually even more important, up to two-thirds of all SMEs in the other Nordic countries as well. So often you have a special purpose entity as part of an enterprise group being responsible for the exports, and they are the ones reporting it to the statistical office, and therefore we get this kind of you can say miscalculation. Could I have the next slide, please? It's just to show another example of where we have been linking the statistical business register information, again with structural business statistics, and in this case, the inward fed statistics. We use that to look at what is called scale-up enterprises, which are enterprises which grow with 20% annually over a three-year period. So it's the enterprises which have a high policy interest. And of course, when you look at these enterprises, one of the questions are they domestically owned or would they be foreign owned? First of all, around 80% in the Nordic countries are actually domestically owned. But if you then look at the ones which are foreign owned, you see some interesting differences. For instance, in a country like Denmark, nearly half of them are owned from other EU countries. from other European countries. But if you look at Sweden, I think if you click now, you would get another ring. Is that so?
Yes.
Yeah, there. And there you would see from Sweden, you have more than 50% which are actually owned from outside of Europe, either from US or rest of the world. And in the case of Sweden, there's actually a lot of Chinese owned fast-growing enterprises. Can I have the next slide, please?
Okay, moving down. Next one.
Yes, that is an example of what we are considering doing. So what I have shown so far is our experiences in linking data to the National Statistical Business Register. But what we are considering in Europe right now is, could we link it to the international business registers? In this case, it would be EGR register, European Group Register, which we have in the EU, which would add an extra dimension to the available information which we have in the national microdata infrastructure. So we could add information about the size of a global enterprise group. We could have information about the global reach of the global enterprise group. So, for example, is it an enterprise which are only having affiliates?
Peter, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Sorry, I think, Peter, are you on mute?
So, are you a producer? And in case you're a producer, where are you in the production chain? And I think that would help us to better understand the value chains, which is an important area to analyze currently. That was my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. And this gave a very good overview of the use of the linking of microdata. I'd like to thank all the presenters, of course, Monica, Arthur, Rico, and Peter for their presentations, which were very insightful. We now have the Q&A session planned. There are already 2 questions, one for Uganda and one from the ICC in the chat. But I'll hand over to Ivo to chair this part of the call today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rico, and good day, all of you on the call. It's my pleasure to moderate the Q&A. Although it was indicated that we can continue till 10, we will see how the discussion goes, whether we need that extension, Jerry, to go forward. But let me start off first by thanking the presenters for the excellent presentation, which were very insightful. Mentioning them by name, Rico Dunn, a very insightful sort of view on cross the differences, which I found very interesting to see, the differences around the organization of statistical registries, and you gave a very great overview of what these differences are. And in addition, you said you guys are very well organized. So also there, you gave a very great cue about, get your act together if you're working on this. There's a lot of information and a lot of networks that work also regionally and globally that we maybe have to exploit a bit going forward and maybe linking up as we move forward on this initiative. So thank you for sharing that. Going to Monica, I just want to recap a little bit. Monica, thank you again for your insightful presentation, which is, I think always very important. The UN always looks at common principles and how we can build on principles to develop these legal registries. And you gave that very clear way what these principles are. And it tied very nicely to, for instance, the principle that had to do with efficiency, where you say not only you need a one-stop shop, but you also said you need a unique identifier. So it is very much part of the principles of the UN to actually, in a soft way, starting to develop principles that can be followed by countries if they have the ambition of setting up a registry, which I think is the ambitions that all that are on the call. Also, I like the idea around the cost efficiency, but also about that registers are there to share information, but not only within the country, but also cross-border. And I want to remind you that we're very keen to understand, the use of the global unique identifier that definitely could benefit us in get a better insight in the cross-border transactions that are taking place around our businesses. And then I liked the presentation or the principle about doing a minimum standard. Don't go overboard, start simple. And I think that's a very important sort of a basis of which you can start. You don't have to be overly complex that you can think of. Both Monica and Rico mentioned very clearly the kind of oversight that can be different. But Monica clearly in the principles indicated that the state, as he called it, has a very important role. And maybe we can understand better why it should be the state and not sort of independent unit, but that it should be under the state. And that also brings me to the issues that you raised, Monica. I think the issues are very general in terms of across the countries and across the region that are common around outdated laws. They're too complex. There's also a need for training and capacity building. I think we should also bring that in our dialogue, how to actually start to develop that. Also, Arthur, thank you very much for giving that insight of your country practice. I think we had a very great overview of how you build up that register, and that comes with an authority that also has a registration authority across other issues like patents and marriages, which was a very interesting sort of combination of businesses and marriages. So I maybe you can elaborate how that winded up under your sort of jurisdiction, as you will. Rico Kona, one of the best presentations I've seen about the insights of the link between the legal registries, as you will, and the statistical registries, and how you bring that all together from the different sort of perspective. There was also in that link that you brought together about bringing the information together, but also the ideas together across the different sort of related purposes of government, related that you brought out also for tax purposes, which was also for Arthur an issue that you want to develop these registers in a broader understanding. Peter, again, an excellent presentation, understanding that if you develop this more information around these registries and building them in your statistical registries, you can do fantastic analysis on microdata linking, linking not only, understanding the business sort of composition in terms of, the raised capital, the owners and so on, which was very much in Rico's presentation, but that you can link it to issues of trade, linking it to jobs, and even extending that to households. So you could even link business and household relationships that are very important to understand our economies and our societies. So thank you for breaking that ice also in that direction. Now with that, I would like to turn to the Q&A. We have about 15 minutes. And as I indicated earlier, I would like to get your views on maybe the request for clarifications. Now, I just want to open it up. I saw that Gerard Harting, you came up with the question first, so maybe I can turn to you as the first one to raise your questions. I saw the response by Rico, but I think in my reading of his question, it's a bit different than your answer is, although your answer is pertinent, Rico, but I think he's talking about something else. So maybe, Gerard, the floor is yours to state your background, which you did in your question, in your intervention on the chat, but also your question in itself. Gerard, the floor is yours. Gerard, are you still around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Very clearly. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because it was closed. Okay, I shall also show my face. Okay, my job is, among more, the chairman of the ICC DSI program, as explained in the chat. And that is basically covering all exporters, importers around the world. And they are faced with about 40 trade documents, letters of credit, all sorts of documents supporting the international trade. Business to business, but also reporting purposes for business to governments. And we are analyzing the content of the data elements of all those 40 trade documents. And they all have a history, all those trade documents. That's one. The second point is, of course, the UN nations, about 190, do also have a history with their business registers, with local legislation, local technical standards. And in the global world, it becomes more and more complex. The whole supply chain, international supply chain, is more and more digital to connect the dots. And for that reason, I think we will come Q1 next year to the conclusion that it is the best to support the G20 program on the lei, executed by the Financial Stability Board and the Clive Foundation, to choose the lei as the identifier that is recognized all around the world, in particularly for the legal forms that are involved in import and export. And those legal forms are mostly only a subset of the existing legal forms in any of the jurisdiction. I'm very well aware of the ISO 22755 standards, the 11 in many countries, not even 10% of the legal forms are used for by exporters and importers. So what would be the best approach? That is the core of my question, to convince all the UN nations and their business registers, help your exporters and importers to add the lei to the record in your databases. That's all.
Rico, I think this question is for you. My understanding is not so about the legal forms, but it's more about the actual forms that are used by traders, and whether there is a role for the global identifier to be included. Rico.
Yeah, thank you, Gerard, also for your question. I, especially from the perspective of the LEI, the GLIFE and the LEI world, I can, of course, only fully support what you're saying there, that the use of a globally unique identifier is very important. Certainly for all these trade documents you are talking about. And the objective of looking into the possibility of having each country in the world issuing an LEI to all relevant entities, for example, doing that through what we call bulk issuing in the business register, would be a huge step forward. And that is certainly something we will be discussing with ICC DSI anyway. But I think it's also important that you bring it here to the audience of this session, Gerard, because we have quite a few business registers in the session. We have a lot of statistical business registers in the session. And I think it's important that in the global initiative on the unique identifiers for businesses, we do also consider this specific topic as one of the very relevant things to look into after we have concluded our webinars and looking into next steps, what we can really do. So thank you very much for raising this topic. We're not going to answer it today as an easy question, but the question might be easy. The answer will be a little bit more work than that, of course.
I'm available as ICC guy to support whatever additional work is needed.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that's really great. Thank you, Gerard, for stepping up and see how we can join hands in your ambition and our own ambition going forward in this area. So thank you for raising the question and also offering your assistance in this regard. Thank you. I hope the response was appropriate, Gerard, or you want to come back? Yes, yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're all Dutch, so we could do it easily in Dutch, but we'll use our broken English to continue our conversation in English. Now, regarding the other question that was raised, we have a second question, which was from Abel Shoke, if I pronounce it right. That was to Arthur, his Ugandan presentation that I would like to address. So maybe Abel, as you're still around, could you open the mic and pose your question rather than I reading the question from the chat? Are you still around? Otherwise, I'll read the question. Abel, are you there? If not, Abel?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Abel. Good to have you. Go ahead.
Yes.
And open your video so that we can see people as we move along. It is always nice to see the audience. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if I'll be able to find out the video there.
Okay, then this is already great.
Quite new. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. It's a simple question. I was just interested in knowing from the Uganda presentation in terms of the use of the unique business identifier. In terms of the tax registration, are they only using the UBI, or do they also generate their own tax registration numbers when they register companies for income tax? I just wanted to check how universal is the UBI in Uganda. That's my clarity. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. What I can say is that there is an agreed position that the main identifier is at the time of registering a business. This is actually similar to what is happening with individuals. Before we had a national ID for identification of individuals, the tax register was also generating a tax identification number for individuals. So we agreed that we should now plan on ensuring that the NIN, what we call the NIN, the National Identification Number for individuals, is what will work as a TIN. And also the business registration number is what will work as a tax identification number for businesses. However, because this came midway, we have to allow for time for transition. So they agree that they would create a number, but it will be silent in their system. But generally, what the banks use and all other stakeholders in all systems of government, they use the identifier, which is the business registration number. I hope this gives some clarification. But what I can emphasize is that when people are talking and you have reached a consensus, implementation becomes easy. And like we have said, because there is a lot of historical companies that we are dealing with, where we are in the process of data update, that is why we allowed that for now, we allow it to be generated silently. But we look forward to having a uniform register where all data is uniform, and we anticipate that so many companies will be deregistered at the end of the update exercise because they will not meet the requirements for update. Then we generate a clean register, and from then we will now only generate one number. I hope I'm clear. Thank you.
Just to get back, Abel, was it appropriately responded to your question? Just to check.
Yes, yes, I appropriately responded. Thank you very much, Arthur.
Thank you. Just to follow up on what you just mentioned, Arthur, which I found very interesting. You made the link, if I heard you right, but maybe you can confirm, and otherwise you say no, that's not what I said. But in my understanding, what you said, there is a relationship in terms of the registration of persons, individuals, right? Male, female, an ID for a person in Uganda, and the registration of businesses. And that probably is a broader sort of wave, which we also think is important. We would like to link the civil registration, as you will, with the business registrations, because there's a lot of similarities, as there are differences. Remember Rico's presentation, there's a lot of differences, but there's an important aspect of similarities that we could also stress. And probably you may like to develop a little bit more about Uganda and the data culture that is emerging in the modernization of your country. Just to elaborate a little bit about, if there is a link, how does that link play out? Also in terms of setting the ID, just to get the flavor from you.
Thank you so much for that question. I have to say that Uganda, we now have a very elaborate system for national identification for persons. And to register a business, you must have a valid, verifiable ID number.
As a person?
As a person. So when you get on our platform, you put in your number, and it has to be verified through systems integration with the National Identification Authority. But what I've said is that this is until like 1.5 years ago, when we have put in place a new system. So we have required all historical companies to update their data. So they get every person now, if you had a company which you registered before the time of implementing the system, when you come for any continuous filing, we request you to update. And when you are updating, you must first enter that national ID data that is verifiable, in addition to other information that we might want. Like of recent, we now require beneficial ownership information. So we also require you to update beneficial ownership information. But most importantly is that what we regard as our clean register, though they are not the entire register has been cleaned up, but at least we have verifiable individual national identification numbers. I thank you.
Very interesting, very interesting. So, and it is very important what you just stated. It's also, I think, for those that are on the call, that how much actually the collaboration should be there, at the civil registration versus the business registration. In your case, that is so important for building up your own business register, as you indicate, indicated, to get of quality and to be verifiable, right? So in that case, you make a very clear observation. Allow me to bring one more question. If you go to the linking the civil registration as a basis to develop your business ID, is there then also the understanding from my side is that you do not restrict yourself only to the formal economy in terms of businesses? Is it also that you register also let's say the informal micro units, as compared to, let's say, the formal market with corporations and medium and small enterprises? Just to get a view about the scope of the register and the ambition that you have in Uganda for this business registry.
Yes, thank you. Under the collaboration that we call the TRIP, Taxpayer Register Expansion Program, we are collaborating with local authorities that operate in the different, what we call districts, local governments. So every time you are given a license, you must be formally registered. but we registered it as a small business, majority of them, which we, in our law, we call it a business name or a partnership. So we ensure that all small businesses are registered as business names during the licensing cycle of local government. So that is the relationship that we have. So when the local governments are licensing, they have to ask you, have you registered? Otherwise, we will not issue you with a license to operate. And then the difference is that it is cheaper to register because just 20, like less, like $6 to register that business name, which we regard as a small business. So if you are not able to register as a limited liability company, we give you the option that at least register it as a small business, which can later, after learning the benefits of the company, can be upgraded to be a limited liability company. But the objective remains that we reduce informality and make sure that all operating businesses are registered. I thank you.
Yeah, no, very good that you articulate like that. Informality is basically defined by not being registered, and by getting them registered, you become formal. So this is transition in status. So an interesting way of defining it, which is absolutely true, you know, by definition, ontology-wise, you're right, Arthur. So thank you for sharing that. And this is important, that you basically want to embrace the full business sort of environment in promoting business activity, getting access to financial services that you clearly indicated also. So there's a clear benefit for the company to register. So you see the benefit flowing to businesses that are registered, and how it might help them to flourish, not only domestically, but also with international trade. So thank you for that. Now, I don't see any more questions, but I do not want to close before I just turn back to the speakers. Just to get their reflection on maybe the others, and getting a sense of where we are in our thinking. So if I just take it from the top, and Stefano, I would like to first turn to you. Is maybe your sort of reflection on what you've heard today, and you know, giving us some cues of where we should take it in the next meeting. Stefano, are you still there? I didn't check whether you're still around, but I assume you are. Stefano? I know we muted you, so you have to maybe unmute yourself. Stefano,
Yeah,
are you still around?
We are a little bit over time, so probably he has left.
Yeah, maybe he had to leave. Yeah, yeah.
I don't see Stefano connected anymore.
Okay, now, then let me quickly turn. Rico, I see you on screen. Rico, go ahead. Some closing sort of reflections on your end.
Yeah, I must say that first of all, of course, like I said earlier, very insightful, very happy with all the presentations today. But I think the summing up has been done by Jerry quite nicely in the chat already, where he said, I mean, there is a unique ID for natural persons in the majority of the countries, but this also would lead to the same idea that we really need to have a similar unique ID system for enterprises as well, companies and other types of businesses actually. And then, of course, the next step, or sometimes immediately the same step, could be to not focus on only national purposes, but absolutely look at international purposes, cross-border trade and other matters, to look into the possibilities of using a globally unique identifier, because otherwise the unique identification will be restricted to your own country. And that, of course, is for many companies not enough.
Yeah, no, thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for that reflection. I'm going quickly to Monica. Monica, from your perspective, from the you know, UN legal perspective, you've done great work, developed the guide, clearly indicate the burning issues to make progress in this area for trade purposes. How do you reflect on today?
Thank you, Ivo. Thank you also to the other panelists. I learned actually things. Of course, to me, statistical registry are a little bit of an unknown animal. I actually follow up a little bit on what Rico's just said. The guide, as I mentioned probably at the other webinar, the guide doesn't include recommendations on the adoption of a global legal identifier, which is, however, mentioned in the preparatory work that are public and official documents. And then eventually the states decided that it seemed a little bit too advanced, probably was not, to have it also in the final version. But definitely the guide recognizes the importance of a future system of global identification that will benefit MSMEs. So, of course, I cannot commit unsidral on this. That's not my job, and of course, I don't have the authority to do that. But I just would like to highlight again that, and as you said also at the beginning, summarizing my presentation, the guide is aware of the importance of cross-border recognition, of the importance of cross-border dialogue between registries, and the importance of sharing information and have an easy access to information on micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises cross-border. So clearly, I think that this initiative from UNDESA is kind of going to the right direction.
Excellent, thank you, and thank you for joining up with us in bringing that UN voice forward and building on your work going forward. That may want to be revisited as we progress, hopefully. So that's always the importance about all these guidelines. But we can learn from how you put the guide together. So that's an important aspect. I want to turn to Arthur. Arthur, thank you again for your presentation. Any closing sort of remarks on your end, briefly?
Yeah, thank you. I'm privileged to be part of this discussion. I know that we need to move away from the name of a business entity to a number, because we already have done it with the persons. Every time you are crossing to another country, they are more interested in the passport number, not your names, because there is a possibility that many names will be similar. And the huge discussion we need is to have a standard that can really make each jurisdiction have an easily identifiable number, like we have just adopted the ISO standard to start each business number with 800. So when you see 800, know that that is an entity 14 digit from Uganda, but we need to have a global standard, because where we are going is it's going to be huge exchange of information between all jurisdictions, especially with the increase in the digitization of registries. I thank you, and we'll be privileged to be part of this discussion again. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Arthur. Also, thank you for stepping up and saying that you're very available to support the initiative. Thank you also for that, and your wise words about we live in a global community, and we have to think globally also to be able to be connected. So it is important, not at the national level and at the subnational level, but also linked to the international level. So thank you for that, for the good of your own country, of course, as we know. Rico, briefly, on your end, what are your takeaways?
Yeah, I think that it's very important to introduce a unique identifier just before combining sources to improve the information you have in your business register. So I think it's of great importance, and if it's possible to do it globally, then it's even still better. But first, the national unique identifiers. Yeah, think of a system that will improve your business registers.
Yes. No. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah. Where we are thinking of is should you first develop a national ID first and then go adding the global one, or can we sometimes make a leapfrogging jump in organizing your ID in a form of an international standard that at least is available for countries to think about? But thank you for that absolutely wise word. You have to start somewhere and start simple and build on the ID systems that you have, which are absolutely not national, and then think about the broader sort of ramification of how you can use your ID. Thank you, Rico, and a great presentation again. I think very insightful and very happy to add it to our broad knowledge base that we have. Thank you. Peter, the last words are yours. Are you still there? I don't see your video. Maybe that is... Peter, could you still... Peter also probably has left. Peter?
He's not there. I don't see him.
I don't see him anymore. No, it's beginning 10 minutes over time, and people are well, the hardcore is still there, and it's a big group. I'm very impressed. We kept 80% of the audience. They have also asked me to make the closing remarks. Jerry, I will do it, I think so. So let me do it going forward. As I already said, I thanked everybody. Of the speakers, I won't repeat myself for just to be efficient in time. I did forget two speakers that opened the session, which was Stefan. As you may know, and Stefan indicated, we are great friends. We've been colleagues for the last 22 years. So we know each other as well. We followed each other's career. And also, I have followed the career of Stefano, who is the chair of the UN Committee of Experts. That's also a dear friend. So both of you who are not anymore on the call, I'm sure, I would like to thank them too for being and making themselves available as senior sort of officers in the statistical system. I see some others that I just want to mention and acknowledge. Hank, also thank you for making all the efforts that you do in terms of moving the program forward under your leadership, related particularly to the business register for which you are responsible, and making available the insight from the National Statistical Office of the Netherlands. So thank you for that. We have a great group together. I think we are on a journey that allows us to build and extend progressively. Jerry, maybe to you to indicate when will be the next sort of webinar. Do we have the date easily available? That at least that we remind people. Maybe the save the date has already gone out, then it should have been out. If it doesn't come immediately to mind, Jerry, don't feel that you have to say it. We can also send it to them later on.
Yes.
We
It's on
send
the
it later.
19th of December.
19th of December. There we go. Thank you for that, for sharing that. I like to thank the participants for being with us so long. It's almost 12 minutes over time. A great group getting together, and I think the webinar shows its strength in terms of sharing information. And the next seminar is very important because we're going to conclude and see what steps we can take. So it is important that you will be there sharing your experience and increasingly, hopefully, feeling more sort of at ease in making interventions. So thank you very much all, and wish you a wonderful day today. And we'll see each other on the 19th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivo.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, dank je wel. Well, very good.